In this brief video, we share how to shop for wheel spacers for those who want to change the appearance of their vehicle or fit larger tires. You should be aware that large spacers will impact handling and stress on the wheel bearing and suspension components, but these impacts are outside of the scope of this video. We're keeping it to just how to pick the right spacers. We're shopping for simple spacers that have simple holes and simply move your wheels out, but you should be aware that other kinds of spacers do exist, including the kinds that have studs built in and let you mount other kinds of rims that wouldn't ordinarily fit. But again, we keep it simpler here, just for moving wheels out and no studs built into the spacers. We dedicate a chapter later on in this video on the topic of studded spacers. The first thing we want to determine is how thick of a spacer we need. Two factors that help me arrive at a number were spacing between the tire and the front suspension strut and making the wheels sit more flush with the fender because I think it looks pretty. At the end of weighing these two factors and how much wider and taller tire I wanted, I decided a 15mm spacer would add 15mm to the possible width of the tire because the proximity to the strut was the limiting factor. There is plenty of space between the tire and wheel well, and 15mm would not cause too much poke, if at all, of the tire from the fender. There are two measurements you want to gather about your rims: bolt pattern and center bore. Bolt pattern is how the bolts are laid out and how far they are from each other, and center bore is how large of a circle is bored out on the inside of the wheel so that it can sit on the rotor and not wobble. This 2019 F-Series Mini has a center bore of 66.6mm and a bolt pattern that is 5 by 112mm, so it has 5 bolts that are 112mm apart. I obtained these numbers by looking them up for the 2019 5-door Mini Cooper because I know it has original wheels, and you can do the same if you know that you have OEM wheels by looking up your year, make, model, and that information will be online. The next thing you'll want to do is look up bolt thread. That should have also popped up when you searched for your year, make, and model. We'll want to measure the length of the bolts, and that won't appear in search results most likely, so we need to remove a bolt and measure its length in millimeters. Last but not least, this is not a measurement, but we'll want to make a note of the shape of the bolts. If you get this wrong, your wheel might fall off, so this is important. You'll want to check whether the bolts are cone seats or ball seats. This is so that you buy the right bolts that sit snugly against the wheel and hold it in place correctly. I'll put an image up on the screen now to illustrate the difference. With all of the bolt and rim measurements done, it's time to shop for bolts and spacers. First, we buy the spacer. I obtained mine on eBay, and I balanced a few factors like brand, name, and price. This seemed like a decent brand, and these weren't too cheap nor too expensive, and they had a promotion going on. I had difficulty removing my spacers from my Boxster, and I learned from that, and if you haven't seen that video, see that video, because the wheel spacers were not painted and were stuck on the wheel hubs. So I learned from that experience and picked spacers that had a coating on them so that they come off easier in the future. I checked that they had the right bore size of 66.6mm and the correct bolt pattern of 5 by 112 and purchased 4 15mm spacers. A lot of these spacers on eBay had bolts included, but I didn't trust free bolts that came with the spacers and wanted to buy them from a company that specifically sells bolts as the focus because my wife drives this car, and bolts snapping while driving is the last thing I want. I found these on Amazon that were 15mm longer than the originals, had a thread of M14 by 1.25, and were cone seat, not ball seat. You need to buy longer bolts when installing spacers so that your wheels do not fall off. Then it came time to install. I won't bore you to death with how to take your wheels off and put a metal disc on and then reinstall the wheels. Instead, I'll talk about something useful and share my thoughts and impressions on these spacers. The packaging was good. The rotors themselves, as you can see, have a lip where the wheel goes and then are carefully bored out to go onto the original center bore and maintain the 66.6mm of space. They go snugly onto the wheel hub, then we spin them to align the holes and reinstall the wheels. Super straightforward and looks good. Here we can see the before and here's the after with original tires. Here's how it looks, and I like how the wheels look more pronounced yet are still within the fender. Here's how the Mini looks with wider and taller tires installed with 15mm spacers. Thanks to the spacers, the larger tires were able to clear the suspension. Imagine carrying a large TV by holding it close to your body. It's heavy but doable. Now imagine trying to carry the same TV, but doing it with your arms outstretched. It will be much harder to do even though the TV weighs the same. The same principle applies to wheels and spacers. Your body is the car, is the wheel hub, and your arms are the spacers. And the TV is the wheel, which the hub needs to carry. The power steering will have to work harder to turn the wheels, and the wheel hub needs to be able to survive the additional stress. The bigger the spacers, the tougher turning will become. Small spacers of about 15 millimeters shouldn't make a big difference. Go much bigger than that, and you start encountering the effects. Now that we've covered regular wheel spacers, let's close out this video and this chapter by mentioning other kinds of spacers. Earlier in the video we discussed wheel bolt pattern, which on the Mini is 5x112 millimeters. If you get spacers that are thick enough, on one side they might install into your wheel hubs with 5x112, but the other side could be studded with 5x130 or 6 by another number, so that you can mount other kinds of rims. This is how people put Jeep wheels, which can be 5x127, on Cayennes that have 5x130. Remember that the center bores need to match on one side and the other for this to work. With that, we conclude today's video, and thank you for tuning in.